Hello, I want to share some thoughts on artificial intelligence in schools. To make this in some sort of a sequence, I'll touch upon three aspects. The first is why the excitement about artificial intelligence, why AI at schools, and how AI at schools. The excitement about artificial intelligence has happened for the last couple of years, although AI as a field has been dormant for about 50 years. For a long time, there was this kind of a battle of wits whether humans are superior or machines are superior. And even though computers were around us and they did lots of interesting things, there were no match to human abilities. And there was a time when, for example, people made games for programs for games like chess, and the human champion always won. Only when Kasparov was defeated by IBM Blue, and the video is beautiful about how his face fell when he lost to a machine, that people started wondering that yes, maybe there's a time when machines will become better. Then came the classical story of Jeopardy, where IBM Watson defeated the human champions for several years in this game of Jeopardy, which involved knowledge from all kinds of sources, etc., etc. More recently, the game of Go, which is even more complex than chess, was beaten by a computer. And what was even more interesting was that another version of that program called AlphaGo Zero actually beat all the champions without having actually played against champions. It kind of learned by itself. And this is very important. So when AlphaGo Zero started out to learn to play Go and become a champion, all it knew was the goal. And I think this is very important for education. So once the learner knows the goals, he or she should be able to achieve those goals actually even without any instruction. This is really amazing. For quite some time, until recently, everybody thought driving a car is so complex a task. You need to know the theory of the rules of the road, you need to apply it to the actual conditions of the road, which vary from place to place, and it was thought that this is impossible for a machine to be able to even come close to a human, forget surpassing a human. But that has also happened, and we already have driverless cars in operation all over. This has led to almost a belief that maybe AI machine intelligence can solve everything in the world. And to understand what it can and what it cannot do, and how does it do what it can, it's interesting to be able to get a feel for this at school itself. So that is why we are talking about introducing children to AI and ML at school itself, because it has happened over time that any subject which first began was taught at the master's level, then bachelor's level, and eventually came down to school level. So many things that you learn at the school level in the traditional subjects like physics and maths and biology were once upon a time research subjects or taught only at the university level. The other reason that we are looking at AI at school level is that many countries of the world have started doing that, and China is among the leaders. China has already created a curriculum for all school children. Canada has an online course for school children. US has some other provider for school children. And Finland has a course not only for school children, but for all people, including all people of the world. Even you can go and do an AI awareness course from Finland. It's interesting that India has also responded adequately. The Niti Aayog advised the CBSE that we must start talking about AI at the school level, and the CBSE has declared that for classes 8th, 9th and 10th of CBSE schools, there will be an opportunity for students to study AI while they are in school itself. And this is another thing. Long ago, Madan Mohan Malviya, 100 years ago, while founding the Banaras Hindu University, had said that even if we start teaching the children technology while they are at the school level, by the time they grow up and come out, they will be ready for the world that is going to embrace that. Since we believe that the future of the world is going to be an AI-driven world, you see AI in all kinds of applications today. Even clothes manufacturers like Brooks Brothers is using AI for its purposes. The familiar beauty cream Olay is using AI for that. It is requesting its customers to take a selfie and post it on the Olay site, and the Olay site will give them a recommendation what kind of creams they should use, when they should use, what are the skin types, and so on and so forth. And this is unimaginable. That is how Andrew Nutt, the famous leader in AI whose course has drawn 1 million students and it was part of Baidu, part of Google. He says AI is the new electricity. And if you see the excitement that we now have about electricity reaching every village, you just imagine AI reaching every hand, every person, because the new mobile phones are going to be AI empowered. The iPhone 10 already has AI chips, many others. So now we are talking every single person will have an AI-enabled smartphone with him and therefore will be able to do so many things. So how do we do this at school? The CBSE is of course talking of a program, etc. But like languages, learning technology has to be an immersive experience. It cannot be taught on the blackboard and then followed by practical and so on. It has to be while you are at it. And therefore the new models of working on mobile phones with apps, playing games, solving quizzes, doing problems, competing with each other on leaderboards. These are the kind of things which will have to be done in order to make that happen. Another distraction that is happening is that people want children to learn AI so very quickly they can do the job which Google etc. want them to do. I think we should go a little slow. When children are in school, they should understand the principles more than the practice. The practice of the day will actually become obsolete by the time they get out of school or get into university. And therefore things like computational thinking, which is the way that people solve problems when they're doing a computer, or mathematical thinking is very, very fundamental. The tragedy today is that in classes 9, 10th, 11th, 12th of the NCERT books, Appendix 2 is one on mathematical modeling. But my encounter with students in a general sense, this is not serious research, has shown that none of the students study those chapters, nor are they taught in schools because it is not asked in the CBSE exam. And this is going to be another interesting aspect, that how do we make people excited and curious about something and not only learn it if it is asked in the exam. A sound understanding of mathematics and problem solving and structures is going to be very, very important if people want to be really ready to be able to look at this, because AI will involve things like classification, pattern recognition, recommendation engines, and so on and so forth. For this, an ability to do some abstraction is going to be very important. So typically when you study geometry, you work on 2 dimensions. When you study 3-dimensional geometry, you study in 3 dimensions. When you will solve problems in terms of AI and ML, there could be multiple dimensions, even 100 dimensions or 200 dimensions and so on. So sound appreciation of the key mathematics that goes into it will also be very, very important. So in order to have something concrete for students to pursue, a group of school educators coming from physics, mathematics and computer science background have got together and created a kind of a 6-month program for class 11 and 12 students. These were accomplished teachers with a lot of practice on their own, and they came up with something like 24 topics which they will cover during a 6-month period, each topic being covered over a week. It's clustered into 6 groups. So one of them is the foundations. So in foundations we talk about, also try to make them a better independent learner. So it talks about the how to become a smart learner. It talks about computational thinking. It talks about the gig economy, because the children should be aware that in future they will not have a job which will be for 33 years and then they can retire and have a pension. So these are all important aspects of the AI thing. In the second part, we try to talk to them about the Turing's theorem, which is the fundamentals of AI. We talk about swarm intelligence. We talk about a few other things to them to appreciate. The third one is mathematics, because you cannot make serious dent in AI without understanding your linear algebra, your calculus, your statistics, and so on and so forth. Then we talk about machine learning, deep learning, artificial neural networks. We also talked about the biology of the human brain, because if you don't know neuroscience, you're not really talking much. You're saying I'm simulating a human brain, but you have no idea how the human brain works. So in some sense, an exposure to neuroscience is an important aspect. So you must know where the brain is, the hippocampus, hypochondria, wherever you are going to study various things, how these things happen. A lot of actual AI applications like visual recognition or convolutional neural network actually draws upon the way the human brain actually interprets it. and therefore to have a good appreciation, understanding, it is important to have that. We also in that course talk about application issues like AI and ethics, because ethics becomes a very important aspect. We have seen many of the companies like Facebook and Google are under questioning for their various philosophical approaches that they use, and same thing is going to happen with respect to AI. Are we using AI in an ethical way or not will also be an important thing, and therefore an awareness of this at school itself is very, very important. We have seen in the past that many successful people who did not bother much about ethics actually then ended up in very embarrassing positions, like having to go to jail like Rajat Gupta and so on and so forth. So it is good that the school itself we instill some aspects of ethics also while giving them knowledge about the emerging very, very powerful technologies.